Welcome back, everybody, from the studio in the bonus room above the garage on the north side of Fort Mill, South Carolina, in the shadow of Charlotte, at the foot of Mount Bolzoni. It's the York County Democratic Party YouTube show and podcast. It is YCDP TV. Here's my co-host. There he is, Matt Villardebo. Welcome back to the show, Matt.
Thank you for having me, Gary. Great to be back with you, brother.
This episode is going to be called A Word.
A Word.
A Word. The A Word about crisis pregnancy centers. The A Word is, you know what the A Word is? It's abortion. We, especially, everybody else needs to get over the idea that this is something that is dicey to talk about. It is fact of life.
We can talk about things in and around the vagina without embarrassment or squeamishness.
Yeah. Okay, sure. So we've got we have a couple of guests coming up on the show. Jennifer Patterson is the co-director of communications and social media committee co-leader. I'm not going to be able to squeeze that all.
That's a lot
in her title, but it's all there for a group called the RRC, the Reproductive Rights Coalition. It's a group out of Charlotte that is abortion supporting. And one of the people that works with her is Bruce Moody. He's the director of security for the RRC, and I think he also tends to do a lot of social media stuff as well. So we are going to talk today about crisis pregnancy centers. And if you're not sure what that is, you're going to learn pretty quickly what it is. And then as I was talking to Jennifer before we started doing the show, we were working on the idea of doing the show, we realized that the subject of abortion is big, wide, got a lot of facets to it, and it's certainly in the news today. So we're going to limit today's show mostly to the discussion of the crisis pregnancy centers and then do a few more shows on many of the other topics. So I'm looking forward to that. I think we're going to have a lot of good information. So shall we get started?
Let's do it.
Pushing the button. And here we all are in basically the Hollywood squares. Jennifer is below Matt on your screen, and Bruce is below me on the screen. Welcome to the York County Democratic Party YCDP TV YouTube show and podcast. Glad to have you guys here.
Welcome, everybody.
Yeah, and that's what we call in the business a jump ball. I toss it up and no one knows who to talk next and everybody talks next. Crisis pregnancy centers. Big deal for the people who know what they are, but only the people who know what they are knows what they are. And so we're doing this show for the York County Democratic Party folks and anybody else who wants to listen and watch. And you know who our biggest audience is? People who work at crisis pregnancy centers. They're all going to be watching to see what we say about them. So you guys enjoy the program. Have a good time. Tell all your friends. Jennifer, what the hell is a CPC?
Yeah. CPCs are the kind of, let's say, code name for crisis pregnancy centers. And anyone who has been around or in the pro-life side can probably tell you about a crisis pregnancy center. Anyone who has heard a pro-life sermon or talked to a pro-life person has probably talked to you about a crisis pregnancy center and how great they are and what they do for the community. And you probably have no idea what they do or what crisis pregnancy center even is. So I care a lot about them. I know a lot about them. And I want to share that knowledge with everybody, specifically folks here in my county, York County, because we have one. It's in downtown Rock Hill. It's called Palmetto Women's Center. And it's also very close to Winthrop University.
Yeah, I've got their website here, Palmetto Women's Center.
Very deceptively named, might I add, because it would give one the impression that this is where you would go for medical treatment. And that would be about as far from the truth as possible, right, Jen?
The website is set up to look like an OBGYN office and or a place that helps low-income people. Most crisis pregnancy centers are set up around low-income neighborhoods, and they offer a lot of free services, which is their marketing, stick. It's what people really know about them, is that they have free baby clothes, free supplies, free ultrasounds, and free pregnancy tests. Now, I like to use air quotes, so I'm probably going to be doing that a lot more often, but it's always free.
Yeah.
Free ultrasounds and free baby clothes. And we can get more into that, of course, as the show goes on.
Absolutely.
And just imagine, like, okay, going to the dentist, okay, for a medical procedure, but instead you have to sit through a presentation on timeshares in Cancun. That's the same is true for a crisis pregnancy center. They're not there to offer healthcare or any sort of medical services. They're there to give you religious counseling and to talk you out of having an abortion. And they prey on people who are, I guess, what they refer to. I'm going to use Jennifer's air quotes here, abortion vulnerable. And that's, that language is disturbing at best.
Yeah, I want to look at what they have to say specifically about abortion, because it's right there at the top of their website. And they'll talk about the pill, which is a thing these days. Everyone's heard about abortion pill reversal, which is something nobody hears about it unless you go into one of these places. Procedures and recovery. And it almost sounds like, yeah, they'll set you all up, but they're not even going to come close to setting you up for actually getting an abortion. They have a second website. And as you go through their public-facing website, all of their language is couched in, we're going to give you information. Come here for information, for ultrasounds.
Very clinical.
Yeah.
Very medical.
They don't, looking at their services page, they don't really list any real medical services. They don't have doctors. I don't know if they have nurses. They don't say. But nothing in terms of real medical services. It's all about, we will give you information and education. But they have a website, an internal website for their team, which after we show it now, they're going to take off the public internet. But we'll show it. Here's what they really are. The vision of Palmetto's Women's Center is to foster a community where every individual chooses life for their unborn child. Eternal faith through faith in Christ. You don't see any of the religious stuff on their public-facing website. Abundant life by walking in obedience to Him. And their mission, we promote life by offering gospel-centered care and counseling. That's what they do, gospel-centered care and counseling. Excellence in medical services, I'm not so sure, because they don't really talk about any medical services that they have. And focused education and resources so that abortion would become unthinkable. That is the honest statement of their mission, except they don't say that on their public-facing website.
The second website is for donors, churches, and volunteers.
Yep. So Jennifer, you have a slideshow. Is this the right time to go through your slideshow?
Sure. We covered a little bit, so there might be some duplicates, but yeah.
That's never a problem to reinforce things and to repeat a little bit. So this is the beginning, and you just tell me when it's time to change slides.
Yeah. So hi, welcome to Fake Clinics 101. In York County, again, we only have one fake clinic that I know of, but in Charlotte, I think there's 7 scattered around the area between Uptown, Concord, Huntersville, and a couple other, Gastonia. So depending on where you are, there's probably one within 50 miles of you. And this is the who, what, when, where, why, and how of their strategy. If you will go to the next slide.
There's a whole lot more of these. A whole lot more of these than there are of actual abortion clinics.
We'll start with the who.
Okay.
Who are these places? Crisis pregnancy centers are religious nonprofits. They're 2 main corporations that purchase new locations or oversee the more remote locally run clinics are CareNet and the Human Coalition. Palmetto Women's Clinic has been overseen by CareNet, according to their hidden website, since 1986. These big organizations funnel donations and policy downwards and siphon information, visitor details, medical records, contact information upwards into their databases. The vast majority of your local church down the road probably has one of these places on their missionaries list and or on their donor list. Moving on to the what are they? They're called crisis pregnancy centers, also sometimes pregnancy resource centers. And they have a booklet that they follow, which is why a lot of them are named something like this. There are starting to be some places with creative names, but those are rare. So Palmetto Women's Clinic is kind of an offshoot. The one in Charlotte was called PRC of Charlotte for a while. Then they changed the sign to say Health for Her. And then they moved across the street, and now they are Queen City PRC. So, there's a little bit of variation sometimes in that, but that is what we are talking about and what they are. Moving on to the next slide, we're going to ask, what do they do, right? We hear a lot about the things that they offer, right? The free ultrasounds, the parenting classes, the free pregnancy testing. They have a lot of different ways to bring in people and advertise themselves. It's like a carrot at the end of the stick to bring people in. They will have people talking to counselors, going over what they do. Again, the biggest thing that they market is the help that they offer to prospective parents. They get a lot of underprivileged and financially strapped people in the door this way. They intentionally prey on poor people because of where they're set up, and because in this country, and because of systemic racism, it's mostly Black people, immigrants, and other minority groups that they get in the door. Moving on to our last what. Then what? After, the free ultrasound and the free pregnancy test that they give you, their goal is to keep people from visiting an abortion clinic. They sign them up for classes, and the classes earn them vouchers for the free items. We can discuss more about the ultrasound lies later, but again, the carrot is getting people in for the free services. Love Life, a group that started just up the road in Charlotte, offers help to them for up to 2 years. And that's their hook. They manipulate guilt, shame, whatever they can, a pregnant person into not getting an abortion. And then the rest of the pregnancy, they proselytize the person. Most of these classes that they offer are religion classes with some basic parenting how-tos based on the religious models that they follow. So you're going to get Dobson, you're going to get all these other, you might even get Baby Wise. Like, you'll get religious parenting advice along with your religion classes. But the free stuff is limited to what they have in the donation bin. If no one has donated a car seat recently, there are no car seats available. And these places don't take their taxpayer money down to Babies R Us and buy you a brand new one. If there's only 6 to 8 month baby clothes available, you get to pick from what they have. And they're not going to get you baby clothes for your baby size. Sometimes I do see organizations that put out like a request to their local churches or partners asking, we have someone that needs a stroller. But it's a waiting game to see if someone donates a used one to them, and you may or may not be next in line to get that.
You mentioned taxpayer funded.
Yeah.
Am I peeking ahead at your slides, or should we mention that they're
a little bit?
Okay,
but we can go into it.
So they get your tax money.
They get your tax money.
Okay.
And they're using that for their salaries, for their rent, for their supplies, and most of these items that they give out to people are donated, used secondhand items. Interesting thing also about the baby shower, if you look at Palmetto Women's Center's reviews on Google, they do group baby showers. So if you're in their program and you have a baby shower, it's going to be you and however many other people are in their program. It's not just you. And the things that they were giving to them were prizes. So you had to compete in games to win baby shower gifts for yourself. And this is based on someone's review on their Google. Fascinating. moving on, I love this. I love this group. They're a Chicago-based group. They're called Repro Transparency, and they are amazing in my opinion. But what they did is they went to the Charlotte Lozier Institute's website, who is a gigantic anti-abortion propaganda arm. And they took the Charlotte Lozier Institute's numbers for the people that they saw and the total number of items that they claimed to have donated. On the surface, 19,200 strollers sounds like a lot of strollers. But if their crisis pregnancy centers saw 1.85 million people, that's only 1% of their visitors coming away with a free stroller. Repro Transparency does a lot of work around these crisis pregnancy centers, fake clinics. And if you want to learn more, follow them on their socials, which is attached there. They are, again, absolutely amazing. I cannot recommend their stuff enough. But just looking at this again, if you come in, this is how likely you are to get any of these items, which is based on their model of donation based. And of course, their vouchers. If you don't complete all of their programs, you're not going to get as many vouchers. We're off of what? We're going to go to when. Now, there's a lot of dates here and a lot of information. So I'm kind of going to summarize. Crisis pregnancy centers started happening after abortion access was allowed. In the process of this, they got themselves state and federal dollars through budget grants for, it's called alternatives to abortion. Because after abortion's legalized, people apparently need to know that if you get pregnant, you can do something other than get an abortion. Like, no one knew.
What a surprise.
Right? Anyway, after the evangelical moral majority got Reagan elected in 1980 and chose abortion to be their next big culture war, these places started raking in money from several places. Again, direct state funding in most states, federal funding through TANF funds, temporary assistance for needy families, churches, organizations. I put on there the license plate funding. And there's just, and of course you get individual donations. So if you donate clothes to them, you're supporting them, right? So
you can get a license plate that is anti-abortion?
Like, it's usually statewide, but if you choose that license plate, money is donated directly to organizations that are crisis pregnancy centers.
And so, of course, they also have a pro-choice license plate, right?
As a former Floridian, I remember all that debate over the yellow license plate in Florida. They've softened the look of it. You know, one thing these groups are really good at is like rebranding and like being careful to cultivate an image that kind of makes them look what they're
sanitized.
Not. So I remember the license plate controversy, and I remember young Matt Villardo like totally being against. Any of that. It's an avenue to take public money and drive it to these religious institutions, and that's just.
And they are very good at it. The how-to manual that I mentioned here by the person that started the first one. Most of the things in his how-to manual are still in play to this day. He's the one that set up the 2 websites. He's the one that set up the naming system. The PRC, CPC, that was his idea. And if you go into these details, it is crazy how effective they have been at siphoning public funds, taxpayer funds to their organizations, which is why there is so many of them. Before we move on to exactly the where, which is the next slide, I do want to mention the 2018, the last one. The NIFLA, which is the National Institute of Family and Life Advocates, sued the state of California because California passed a law requiring them to not provide any information that was either knowingly wrong or unknowingly wrong about anything that they were talking to their people about. And they sued the state of California for this. It was called the FACT Act. And they went to the Supreme Court. the NIFLA argued that it was their First Amendment right to tell people information that they knew was false, misleading, or medically unsound. And the Supreme Court sided with them. We can go into that more later on, but let's go into where, speaking of federal funding and how they exploded around, where are fake clinics? Everywhere. Seriously. That's all there is to it. Any opportunity that they had, people began to open fake clinics because they were a lucrative business model. They specifically focused on colleges, close to active abortion clinics, and in low-income or urban neighborhoods. They also enjoy buying abortion clinic locations that have closed down or moved and reopening them as crisis pregnancy centers. This is a 2014 picture of the only abortion clinic in Kentucky. This is in Louisville, Kentucky. And EMW Medical Clinic is on the left, and there is a fake crisis pregnancy center directly next door on the right, which, again, if you don't know where you're going, or if you parked across the street and you're walking up, there's two clinics right next to each other. Yeah. And it's very confusing for people, and that is intentional.
One of them has the word abortion in it and pre and post care, and the other is very generic looking.
Mm-hmm. Because that's how they branded themselves when they branded themselves, right? Because the CPC moved in afterwards. In our neighborhood clinic, in our York County side, Palmetto Women's Clinic is, again, very close to Winthrop, the Rock Hospital, and the whole downtown area. They specifically choose these locations, and that is where it is. Moving on to why, there is one reason why. That's it. That's all there is. That is the only reason that crisis pregnancy centers exist. They don't care about pregnant people. They don't care about STDs. Most of them don't think contraceptives are acceptable unless someone's married, and some not even then. They, at the very most, help infants and parents for about a year or so, and then they stop. They don't care what your reasons are for needing abortion care, not income, career, medical anomalies, not deadly genetic conditions, not if you have an incomplete miscarriage, nothing. The proof of that is in the actions that they take. Their hundreds of thousands of dollars in annual staffing budgets could be spent on stocking community diaper clinics or giving to any kind of other organization. The land that they occupy could be a real medical clinic that provides all kinds of medical care to local community. The trillions of dollars in donations that these organizations make in the U.S. could go to helping low-income people survive, lobbying the government for parental leave, or increasing food stamps, WIC payments to literally young infants and their parents, free school lunches, free or subsidized childcare, daycare, kindergarten. There's so many good things that these people could be doing with their time and effort, but they're not. These CPCs and the organizations that fund them and the donations and the money that they make is only for one reason, and that is just to stop people from getting abortions.
And I underscore two things from Jennifer's incredible presentation. As I understand it, the crisis pregnancy centers are eligible for federal abstinence education grants because their primary mission is to promote abstinence, whereas an agency that provides actual sexual education are not eligible for those grants. And just going back to the court decision, counselors that aren't actual medical providers aren't required to give medically accurate information. As long as they're not charging for their services, it qualifies as free speech. But people coming into these clinics don't know that. They're being manipulated, and they're being lied to in many instances, and shamed and bullied in some places. And it's just abhorrent what they're allowed to get away with the false and misleading information.
It's easy to manipulate people when they're in a time of crisis too. And they're really, that's like a really intimate concern and fear for a lot of people, is their relationship with their God. And I think it really is a whole new level of cruelty to manipulate people in that way. As a young man, I actually had to take my then fiance at 21 years old into one of these crisis pregnancy centers, not knowing what we were walking into. Mm. And I remember it took like 2 minutes after they sat us down to figure out. And we literally had to like back out of that building just because, I mean, we really thought we were going in there to get some medical advice and some help and some direction. And instead they were wanting prayers. And
instead you were getting a timeshare.
Yeah, it really, I mean, we'll give them your name, phone number, email, because, I mean, it's going to be like a pyramid scheme. I mean, they're going to be all up in your business.
Moving on to the next slide of the how, there are dozens, let's say hundreds to be general, of counties across this country that don't have a primary care provider or a doctor's office locally that does OBGYN services. So if people Google search pregnant their city or pregnant their county, these CPCs will come up on the Google searches. Google has made some strides recently in taking away, if you look up abortion in your county, they will show that these places don't provide abortions. But depending on what you're looking for, if you're looking for pregnancy test or ultrasound or just pregnant, Google will direct you to these places because they are in many cases the only medical facility in the county.
We have multiple counties in South Carolina where OBGYNs are scared to practice. They will not do it. It's all, you know. So yes, Jennifer, what you're saying is true. These people have no option, and what will come up in a Google search, which is what we all do when we want to know something, is hit the old Google machine up, and it sends them to the wrong place.
Right. And that's the how. How do they operate? How do they get away with this? But also, how do they manipulate people? And it's because they have one goal, tons of money, and unlimited freedom to do and say anything they want. They have volunteer labor for their staffing. They have non-medical counselors that can be your local pastor or the church, secretary who volunteers. If you go to the private website, the PWC private website, and you look at the Get Involved, they have student volunteers, local volunteers, church volunteers. And then on the very bottom, they have one where it's specifically medical, because they do the ultrasounds with someone who has either a 3-month sonography degree or is a registered nurse. And one of the biggest clues that you'll see on a forced birth fake clinic website is the term limited ultrasounds. If they say they provide ultrasounds just like that, that's actually one thing that they can get in trouble for with the medical board, with licensing and medical issues. If they say limited ultrasound, that covers them, because ultrasounds are usually diagnostic. You're getting an ultrasound for a purpose. You need to know what's going on, what is wrong or not wrong, and how to treat it. And these clinics are not allowed, because they're not medical facilities, to do diagnostic ultrasounds. So they will do limited ultrasounds, which basically see whether or not there is something in the uterus and or date the gestational age of what is in the uterus. These places don't do diagnostic ultrasounds. So for instance, if you were 12 weeks along and there was no brain, they would not be able to tell you that. They would only be able to say, you are pregnant. It looks to be about the size of a 12-week gestational age, if they tell you that. and that's the other thing. On to the last slide. Why are you so opposed to them? What is wrong with these places? They do their thing. It's legal. Why do we care, right? And it's because they lie. They will tell people things that they know are untrue and go with it. Reproductive Rights Coalition had a TikTok that went viral back in July of 2022. We were uptown in Charlotte at the Human Coalition ran Crisis Pregnancy Center there. I actually walk up to Bruce and I ask him what he's doing because he's holding a big protest sign.
This place is known as a Crisis Pregnancy Center, CPC, and they're really a fake clinic. They advertise for abortion consulting services. They have very misleading advertising in the yellow pages.
What do you mean fake clinic?
Well, they don't really offer any healthcare services.
Interesting.
They offer religious counseling, and if they can talk you into keeping your baby to term, they'll place it in an adoption agency for a hefty commission.
What? They make money off babies? Oh
yeah.
my
And
God.
also, your tax dollars are funding this place.
What?
And they don't really offer any healthcare services.
We got thousands of comments from people who had gone to CPCs like Matt and been victimized. Some of these people went to clinics because they needed just an official proof of pregnancy to get state welfare. Some went because they thought it was a real clinic. I mean, one person went because the church she was going to supported the clinic and she thought it was a real medical clinic. People in the comments had so many horror stories. They were told that they were wrong for being pregnant, for being sexually promiscuous at this counseling appointment. They talked about being locked in a back room, being separated from the partner or companion that they came with, and being locked in this counseling room and not being allowed to leave until they had finished the program. They were forced to listen to propaganda videos and or hear the heartbeat on the ultrasound, even if they said they didn't want to. Some women who were single were pushed to do adoption. You can't parent this child. You can't raise this child alone. You have to adopt it out. And also probably the most common thing is people are given incorrect dates. Sometimes there was incorrect confirmations of pregnancy. And in pretty much every case, they were harassed with calls and texts months later, asking about their baby and how things were. It was heartbreaking, and you can go through that comment thread and read some of those. These places are predatory. They harm people, and abortion is part of reproductive health care. And these people take taxpayer dollars. They take community resources that other people, low-income people, could use and put it towards this one goal. Part of the reason that I feel so strongly about it is that my grandparents actually ran a crisis pregnancy center. They opened it up in 1987 and operate it to this day based on their tax filings. And they had a clinic in a downtown area right off the main street. They used food bank resources to feed themselves and their family after they closed down their maternity care home that they were running. And they used other community resources with this nonprofit license to benefit themselves. I didn't know it at the time. I was a child, when I was eating free bread from the community thrift store, I guess maybe it was a community food bank. And I thought it was really cool that my grandparents could get free bread. And I had no idea that this was resources that could be going towards low-income people that were instead going to my white middle-class grandparents because they ran this nonprofit. That's more of a personal note, but on an overall note, Palmetto Women's Center is trying to get people in, students, it's right by Winthrop, tell them that they should never, ever, 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 ever have abortions, and using taxpayer money to do so. South Carolina Department of Health and Human Services has a public website where you can look up and see who requested money. And the Care Network of South Carolina, kind of like an overall group, got $2.4 million in one lump sum to spread around all the crisis pregnancy centers in South Carolina last year. And that is, again, direct South Carolina taxpayer money going to these places. And I find that appalling as a taxpayer.
That is pretty amazing. The ultrasound thing, as I was thinking as you were talking about it, in addition to getting timing and things like that, and I think you said they provide a wrong date. Are they trying to tell women that they're farther along than they really are?
They have been known to. And again, this is all anecdotal. because they usually have privacy clauses that they make people sign. But yes, so these ultrasounds, anecdotally, people have shared that depending on the state regulations in place and depending on the person, the case, they will add or subtract time as they need. So, for instance, if your state has a 6-week abortion ban, which means that basically 5 weeks after the end of your last menstrual period, if you find out at 4 weeks, right, about a month after your period started, and you go and get an ultrasound at a CPC right away, they may say, oh, you're 6 weeks along. So you would have to go out of state, right, if your state has a 6-week ban, in order to get care. Or, for instance, if a state had a 12-week ban, they would say, if someone went in and they were 8 weeks along, they would say, oh my gosh, you're 4 weeks along. And these people would think, well, I have time. I can decide whether or not I need to terminate or whether I want to carry longer or seek care at a different location, right? Or if there's a waiting period, most abortion clinics have 2-month long waits after Dobbs, after last year. And if you don't schedule something right away, right, if there's a 12-week ban, you may not get care. Or if you go to a clinic and you're setting an appointment and you say, well, I'm 6 weeks along, and they're like, okay, well, we can schedule you 5 weeks out. When you go in, turns out now you're much farther along because they subtracted time. So again, all of this is anecdotal, shared by people after the fact who found out either with a future ultrasound or if they went to an abortion clinic that they were misdated. But it has been said to happen, and they will do this at their convenience. Whatever they think will be the most effective way to prevent people from getting care that they need or want.
Yeah, we can see right on their website. They don't mind obscuring the truth. They don't mind hiding things.
And according to that 2018 Supreme Court case, that is their First Amendment right.
Yeah. Would it be fair to say that they also use the ultrasound to try to form a bond between a newly pregnant woman and the unborn child?
That's a very common talking point. Many churches and pro-life organizations believe that if someone sees the ultrasound and hears the heartbeat, which, it could be cardiac cell activity, it could be an actual heartbeat, depending on the gestational age. But they think that if people hear that, it will automatically turn them into, people who are anti-abortion. And that's not really the case. But because they believe that, yes, they often push people very, very hard to look at the ultrasound image, to take pictures home, and to listen to the ultrasound tones, the cardiac tones.
So I'm adopted and I'm a parent. My kids are practically adults now, but guilting somebody into parenthood is not the way to successful bonding with your child. Wow.
A lot of people talk about adoption as an alternative to abortion, but abortion is pregnancy related. Adoption is parenting related. You can't parent a pregnancy. With a pregnancy, you can either carry it to term or you can terminate it. Those are the two options. And sometimes, again, miscarriages happen, which are spontaneous abortions. Sometimes pregnancies terminate even when we don't want them to, right? There are people that want to be pregnant that lose their children, that lose their pregnancies. Once an infant is born, you can choose to parent. You can choose to put up for adoption. You can choose to, most of the time, if you're assigned male, you can choose to not parent and let the mother be a single mother. People often leave children with grandparents. There are many options if people don't want to parent. But if you are pregnant, your choice is either to carry to term or to terminate. And pressuring someone to carry to term and give birth and then put someone up for adoption is not only very manipulative, but in this country, it is basically a form of selling children.
I know my biological mother actually, and so I know the story. Catholic Charities in the early 70s when I was born, looked after her while she was pregnant. And my mother, who adopted me, she had 2 children previously, but she had to deliver 2 dead babies because she was forced to carry them the term at pre-Roe versus Wade. I was born in 73, a few months after Roe versus Wade, and these other babies were born before me, before Roe versus Wade was law. So, I'm kind of wrapped up in this in a way. I do agree with what you're saying for sure about adoption being a parenting choice. But man, it's weird, because I sometimes look back and think, man, is an organization like Catholic Charities really doing that good of work? But, I owe them my life in a way. So, it's tough. I'm from that older generation where things were just done kind of screwy, and I was fortunate enough to benefit from that.
There is a lot of focus on the for-profit adoption agencies. I follow a lot of people on adoption TikTok who are adoptees who share their story. And, no matter what happened to lead up to the adoption, the fact of the matter is that adoption exists because people who get pregnant and have children either don't have the community support or the resources to parent that child themselves. And many times those are fixable, right? If they had more money, if they had stable housing, if they had a flexible job, if there was childcare available, if there was a community social safety net, food, formula, diapers, those kind of things would support people parenting the children themselves. But on the other hand, again, you have these for-profit adoption agencies, and I will say all of the religious adoption agencies that I know of are for-profit.
Yeah.
And what that means is they are making money off of these parents who cannot afford or cannot well parent their child themselves. And when there's a profit motive, how can you say that there's not coercion? Right?
Oh, yeah.
That these people are not told it's better for everybody if you give that child up. And let's generalize, 90% of cases, the parents are not getting the money. Their parents are not getting the profit. Adoptive parents pay $50,000-ish for a infant, because again, infants are the commodity that they want. They don't want the older kids. And the adoption agencies make money. The lawyers make money. The parents, the pregnant person, the person that gave birth to the child, usually does not get any kind of profit off of this. And so the infant becomes the commodity, and these organizations are making profit off of them. And that just seems appalling.
Yeah, my adoption was handled by the state of Florida. Fortunately, the Catholic Charities was just involved with my biological mother and providing her service because my biological father was in the Army and was up in basic training and about to go to Vietnam.
Most CPCs are affiliated with a religious for-profit adoption center.
Yeah, because
that is another angle.
That's that's the money truck.
Again, many states with Republican legislatures fund these CPCs.
Oh yeah, South Carolina does. It's right there in the budget. They split the money between the CPCs and legitimate sources for pregnancy crisis counseling too.
And lots of money. And
millions.
Yeah, abortion clinics are on their own. They're getting.
Yeah, no, fortunately that the new ban was just taken down in the Senate, but it was set to go. So we're still on the old abortion law in this state. But yeah, they give money to Planned Parenthood, but as a man growing up in the South, Planned Parenthood was like where you went to get condoms and pregnancy tests, or like women I knew who couldn't afford health care went to go for their OBGYN visits and like neonatal care and things like that, prenatal care. So this whole abortion argument that just drummed up a few years ago was kind of shocking to me. Because I knew abortions were done at Planned Parenthood, but I knew that the bulk of their business is like a community service.
Yeah, less than 1 out of 10% of the people, 1 out of 10 of the people that go to Planned Parenthood have abortions.
Yeah. For Bruce, and Jen knows who I am, but Bruce, I ran for State House last year. I was endorsed by Planned Parenthood, had all the trainings with the Planned Parenthood. Very close with Vicky and Jessica over at Planned Parenthood. And I became really good friends with Ashlyn over at the Palmetto State Abortion Fund also. So, this is an issue I support. I was up in Columbia, trying to give testimony in opposition to the total abortion ban that had to make it all the way to the Senate before we were able to get it shut down for the 12th year in a row.
I was able to go down last summer and testify. I wasn't able to go down this year, but I was calling and texting. I know that I was encouraging everybody else I knew to call and text.
Yeah, and
Johnson.
And we can go through the York County legislative folks who voted in support of it in the House, especially Brandon Guffey, Ray Felder, Randy Ligon. Surprisingly enough, David O'Neill voted against it. Along with several Democrats. I think maybe he was confused.
Well, I believe we owe the continuation of our relatively progressive 20-week position to a fight between the very anti-abortion Republicans and the extremely very anti-abortion Republicans. They can't
Which is what David O'Neill is.
Yeah.
He's the guy who sponsored we're going to put women on death row for having abortions.
Yeah. So they can't get their act together to form a majority in the Senate, in the state Senate, to pass their extreme, either version, either 6 weeks or 0 weeks. They're fighting between themselves on that, leaving us with 20 weeks. So, but that is not going to last much longer.
None of their constituents are asking for this. This is coming from the guy who knocked more doors in that last year election than probably most people could ever dream of.
Yeah.
People weren't telling me, Matt, we got to stop these abortions. They're out of control. I heard a lot about the roads. I heard a lot about the poor public education in this state. Not a lot about wokeness and abortions. So
our roads are falling apart, but let's give $2.4 million to crisis pregnancy centers.
Correct. These are everyday problems that everybody deals with in the state. It isn't like a very select, the numbers of people. People are impacted about abortion, and it's important, but these damn roads just, we all drive on them, men, women, they, thems.
The South Carolina pothole weave.
Yeah. So, that's been my biggest frustration. I think this legislative session is I feel like the voters made it clear the kind of things they want, and it's not happening still. And the legislative session has 3 more weeks, and I haven't heard a word about fixing the roads.
We have to do the supplemental nutritional assistance program, the SNAP program. We have to defund that so we can get these crisis pregnancy centers some money.
And we can't give teachers a raise.
Yeah, no, my wife's a teacher. Don't even get me started on
that. Bruce and Jennifer, I'll go with Bruce first rather than a jump ball. Tell me a little bit more about the Reproductive Rights Coalition. Who are they?
We're a group of volunteers that came together over the idea of, making sure that people have access to abortion care through advocacy. We do fundraising. We do a number of different types of events. Jennifer's got a slide there. There you go, Jen. Boy, she is so prepared.
Yeah, that's your website. That's the about part of your website.
We could just read that. Who are we? Okay. Should I just read it? That's exactly who we are. Nonprofit advocating for bodily autonomy in every person, reproductive rights for all. And that's it in a nutshell. We all believe that abortion is healthcare. Plain and simple. It is that simple.
Okay. And you are local, but the other side of the state line over in Charlotte, right?
Just over the border. Yeah.
Yeah. But it is a local operation. And I guess we should mention that there's no abortion clinic in York County.
Nope.
Oh.
So if you want, go ahead.
The closest to York County would be Charlotte, but the Charlotte clinics, depending on how far along you are, don't usually schedule people for second trimester services, even though the state has a higher limit. So if you're looking for a later termination, you're going to have to either go to Greenville or Asheville or Columbia.
So Greenville in South Carolina is an abortion clinic. Asheville in North Carolina?
Yes.
And there's what 2 abortion clinics in the state of South Carolina? Am I correct on that?
There is 3. There's one, I think, in the Charleston area. There is one in Columbia, and there is one in Green. Okay.
So for anybody in York County, well, if you're the very far western edge of York County, Greenville is basically a local option for you. But over here in the Rock Hill, Fort Mill, and by the way, once again, we are the Fort Mill Mafia. Everybody's from Fort Mill. Everybody from Fort Mill, raise your hand. we are, sooner or later, we're going to get somebody on the show who is not from Fort Mill. We do have one woman on the show. Our first gender breakthrough on the podcast. Well, this is only episode 6. So, and I'll also point out that we're talking about abortion, and it's 3 guys, 3 dudes, and 1 woman. The ratio is normal. Way off. I'll acknowledge that because the guys over at the CPC, they're saying, "Look, it's all those men talking about abortion." I recognize that.
There should be more men talking about abortion.
Well, that too, yeah.
There should. I mean, that's something Planned Parenthood helped me out with a lot. I was very I felt like this is just not a man's place. This is a woman's healthcare issue. I mean, that's like one of the things that creeps me out about these politicians, all these old, stodgy white dudes and people like Lindsey Graham who don't and never will have children, Yeah, both. Double tall man for him. Listening to them grill doctors and ridicule people and just, it sickens me. And so they help me a lot. Pull these stories out of me and be willing to share these things that I've kept bottled up for decades. It's very therapeutic for me, and it also humanizes this. And men do have a voice in this, but I think the only voice that matters for men is the supportive voice.
I was raised by a single woman in the 50s and 60s, and I saw the glass ceiling.
Oh yeah,
Mom bumped her head against, constantly.
Frequently, yeah.
So, I was just sort of a product of the woman's experience in those days when women had fewer rights then than they do now. I mean, my mom couldn't even get a bank account. She would get her paycheck and have to, keep cash on hand to pay the light bill. And if we could pay the light bill, and sometimes we couldn't.
It was within my lifetime that women couldn't get a credit card without having their husband co-sign. I mean, we're not an old country. We're still young. We're still doing things. This weekend in South Carolina, we just elected our first chair of the Democrat Party that's a woman, a Black woman. And it's just, it's 2023. I feel like this is something that should have been done in this state 10 years ago.
Exactly.
Within our own party. I mean, we're supposed to be the party of acceptance and the big tent. So, in South Carolina, we celebrate these milestones whenever we can get them. But I feel like we're languishing.
Well, only 6 shows to get a woman on the podcast. And I'll mention that I put a note on our Facebook group, the York County Democratic Party Facebook group, asking for assistance in producing this podcast. And we still need it. I could use a producer or 2 or 3. It's, Matt and me doing hosting. And the producing is lining up guests and coming up with a little bit of research. And this is for maybe 1 show a week or 1 show every couple of weeks. We can get a couple of people to do this. Nobody has volunteered so far. But Jennifer popped in a question and said, "Can I talk about abortion?" And I'm going, "Oh, yes." Yes, you can. We decided to do this CPC program first, but there's more.
so much more. Abortion pill reversal. We can talk about, abortion gestational ages, abortion limits, abortion bans. We can talk about advocacy, what we do as escorts. People went viral on TikTok for clinic escorting back in 2021, and that's a big topic. We can talk about the rescues, right? The people that are in the news now that are going in and rescuing people from clinics. We can talk about the laws that are being passed. I mean, the federal court cases that are going through. There are so many topics. I just do want to shout out Matt, Planned Parenthood. Even though we don't have a lot of things in our county like abortion clinics, and we only have one CPC, Planned Parenthood is working in our county. If you're looking for a teach-in, just last Wednesday, we had a talking about abortion session led by the amazing Allison Tracio at the Mercantile. The Mercantile has a lot of repro events coming up. For instance, RRC is doing a movie showing there. And we're not going to talk about abortion during the movie showing, but it is about reproductive health care issues, specifically how people were sterilized in the 70s, 80s, and 90s without their consent, and just how that plays into the overall goal of reproductive rights. And yes, that is coming up. We're looking to do monthly movie showings at the Mercantile coming up soon. We also have other events that we're doing in Charlotte that are community-based. We have a diaper drive coming up and a couple other things. We're going to be in Rock Hill for Rock Hill Pride. RRC is excited about that. And
do you have a date for that?
Rock Hill Pride is the last Saturday in June.
Yeah, I went there last year. It was awesome how many people showed up and how much
24th.
was going on.
There you go.
Despite the city of Rock Hill refusing to make it official.
Yeah.
It is technically not the Rock Hill City Pride Festival.
Yeah.
It is the Pride Festival being privately sponsored and thrown in Rock Hill.
Yeah. So I think I stepped on you. You said it was June 24th?
Yes.
Okay. And although Rock Hill is not officially sponsoring it, it's on the sidewalks, in the alleys, on the streets. In fact, they do close some streets. So Rock Hill's support is a little bit this way, a little bit that way, but it's welcoming enough that it's a big part of downtown Rock Hill.
Yeah.
So,
oh yeah, I mean, I loved it last year. I mean, it was a little hot, but it was nice. It was so well attended. I was walking around with my megaphone, encouraging people to come register to vote and have a good time. So Rock Hill Pride's great.
Yeah, and the York County Democratic Party will have a booth there as well, and you can meet
For
all
sure.
of the luminaries from the party. Maybe we'll do a podcast from there. I don't know.
Ooh.
Maybe. Think about it.
That would be pretty good, actually.
Yeah. I got to work it in and out of all the vacations my wife is planning for this summer. I'm not sure if I'll be around, but we'll see.
I can relate. Real quick, I want to piggyback on something Jen said about Allison Taracio. She's also scheduling like in-home abortion sessions with people where, like, if you can get together a group of your friends, she can come to your house, community center, wherever these events are welcome, and have like a really intimate sort of session with folks. The goal here is to demystify and take away some of the like negative stigma around abortion. And, like, again, for me, I thought a lot of this stuff was settled, and now we're like rehashing old stuff again. So I feel like in a way we need to get people comfortable with saying abortion and abortion is healthcare, and, breaking down these like barriers and walls that are being put up from folks who want to take away your rights. So, and also for those of you listening, if you get a chance, check out the Palmetto State Abortion Fund.
Yes.
They will absolutely make sure folks can get abortions. They'll get you to it, get you lodging, and get you well taken care of. It's run by my very close friend and former class of 22 state rep candidate, Ashlyn Pro. So reach out to them. They could use your money and your support. And not many folks know it even exists. So Palmetto State Abortion Fund, check it out.
Look how fast I can dial up a website.
donate to Palmetto State Abortion Fund in honor of the legislature of the legislator of yours who voted for that awful abortion ban. Donate
do
in
it.
their name.
Do it in Ray Felder or Brandon Guffey's name.
Dear Mike Johnson,
Yeah.
this is in your honor.
If you can,
because the best way to help people get access to abortions, if you don't have the time to go out and do escorting, if you don't have the ability to go help, or attend a class, you can always donate some money. And these abortion funds are the best way of getting people help. A lot of them also do practical support. So if you're looking to give someone a ride or offer your house, don't do it on a random Facebook page. Do it with an abortion fund, because they are going to vet people. They're going to protect people, and they're going to work really hard to make sure that people who need abortions get them. And that is the best, most effective way. And just in that vein of donating money, recurring donations. A lot of people don't know this. You can donate $20 once and it'll make an impact. Yes, absolutely. You can donate $100 once every 6 months. That'll make an impact. Yes. But if you do one tiny donation every single month, let's say $5, it's not a lot, but that guaranteed base of funding the organization can use. They know every single month we're going to have X amount of donations minimum. That is their floor. And the bigger floor they have, the better equipped they are to take care of their people.
Okay, I think we will wrap things up here. Jennifer Patterson in the lower right box, down there, is the co-director of communications and social media committee co-lead for the Reproductive Rights Coalition. Bruce Moody, right down below me, is the head of security. I'm not sure how much security you really need to do, and we don't want to reveal sources and methods, but
Right.
it's needed. It's actually needed these days.
We have a pretty good national network using different resources that I'm not going to go into any sort of detail here. But we know where the big troublemakers are, where they're going most of the time. But there are local ones too that are sort of, I would say, repeat offenders that we have to keep an eye on. And some of the quiet ones are the ones that we investigate and keep a lot of vigilance about, because you never know when they're going to go off. The quiet ones are like little ticking time bombs.
Yeah.
Cut ears.
Yeah. I mean, the frontline people, some of us have Kevlar vests that we wear at different occasions, and we know someone is coming to town that's a bad actor. And, it can be dangerous, but, it's a risk that you take. And information is usually the key to kind of, keep things calm and to, de-escalate the situation and keep your people safe as much as you can. Yeah. We're organized.
Well, I appreciate the hell out of y'all both putting yourselves out there for this, looking out for your fellow man. This is what makes the world a better place, is looking out for each other with nothing in expectation. We just go do that because that's what we should do. So I appreciate the hell out of both of you for your efforts, and I commend you for your courage.
Thanks. It's the right thing to do.
Absolutely.
And over in the box next to me is my co-host, Matt Villardo. Where in the world is Matt?
I'm in Frederick, Maryland currently. I have been given work, put me on as a project manager at this new medical research facility that they're opening. And I'm having to commission this whole facility with labs. It's problematic.
So this is your lunch hour as we're recording this.
Something like that.
Something like that. All right. So as the stuff goes flying across the screen that you guys can't see, but the folks at home will see, I'm Gary Pierce. This is the York County Democratic Party YouTube show and podcast, YCDP TV. See you all next time, everybody. Over and out.
Y'all take care.